Stay right there, ma'am.
You are not authorized to be on this property.
Excuse me, officer. You will address her through me.
What seems to be the problem?
You know, there's a specific kind of silence that happens when a party dies. It's not just the music cutting out or the chatter fading away. It's a heavy, suffocating vacuum where the air suddenly feels too thick to breathe, and that's exactly what settled over the grand foyer of the Sterling estate at exactly 10:14 p.m. last Saturday. 1 minute I was laughing, holding a glass of sparkling cider that cost more than my first car, feeling the silk of my vintage gold gown settle against my skin. And the next minute my head was snapped to the side, my cheek was throbbing with a heat that felt like a branding iron, and the only sound in a room full of 60 people was the heavy, wet breathing of a man who had decided that my existence in that space was a personal insult to his worldview. I remember looking at the floor, seeing a tiny shard of glass from a shattered picture frame, catching the light from the chandelier above, and thinking how funny it was that I'd spent 2 hours doing my hair, making sure every single coil was perfectly defined, only to have it matted against my forehead with sweat and fear in a matter of seconds. But let's rewind a bit. Because to understand why Officer Chip O'Malley, man with a badge that shone a little too bright and eyes that looked a little too glassy, decided to ruin his life that night, you have to understand the setting, the context, the absolute absurdity of being a young black woman in a space that wasn't built for you, even when you have every right to be there. The party was for Leo Sterling, my best friend since we were freshmen at Columbia. A guy whose family money was so old it probably had dust on the dollar bills, and his parents' estate in the rolling hills just outside of Charleston was the kind of place where the grass is manicured with scissors and the air always smells like jasmine and money. I arrived late, fashionably so, stepping out of the Uber feeling like $1,000,000 because, let's be honest, I looked it. And for a girl like me, Sasha Vance, a junior architect who spends her days in dusty renovation sites, nights like this were rare, a chance to just breathe and be beautiful without having to prove I was smart or capable or worthy. Leo met me at the door with a hug that lifted me off my feet, whispering that I looked like a goddess, handing me a drink, and for the first hour, everything was perfect, just a blur of soft jazz, expensive oars, and polite conversation with people who had summer homes in places I'd only seen on postcards. But then he walked in Chip O'Malley, not in uniform, thank God, but wearing a polo shirt that was strained across a gut built on light beer and bad decisions, with a baseball cap pulled low and that distinct swagger of a man who peaked in high school and has been mad about it ever since. He wasn't invited, not really, he was the cousin of a neighbor. The kind of guy who crashes events because he thinks his badge gives him an all-access pass to the world. And from the moment he grabbed a beer from the open bar, his eyes were scanning the room, looking for something, looking for a problem, looking for someone to make him feel big. It didn't take long for his gaze to land on me, and I felt it before I saw it. You know that prickle on the back of your neck, that ancient instinct that tells you a predator has entered the clearing? I tried to ignore him, turned my back, laughed a little too loudly at a joke Leo's aunt made about her poodle. But O'Malley was like a shark smelling blood in the water, drifting closer and closer until I could smell the stale mix of cheap cologne and alcohol radiating off him. "You lost, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice slurring just enough to be noticeable, loud enough to cut through the conversation near the fireplace. And I turned around slowly, putting on my best professional smile, the one my mother taught me to use when dealing with difficult clients or hostile witnesses. "No, I'm just fine, thank you," I said, my voice steady, turning back to my friends hoping he'd take the hint. But guys like Chip don't take hints, they take offense. He stepped into my personal space, close enough that I had to step back to avoid his chest bumping my shoulder, and said, "I asked you a question. Usually when the help is done serving, they wait in the kitchen. They don't mingle with the guests." And the room went quiet, that nervous, awkward silence where rich people pretend they don't hear anything because confrontation is gauche. My blood went cold, then hot, a flash of pure rage that I tamped down instantly because I knew the rules, knew that if I got angry, I became the aggressor. I became the stereotype he was already painting in his head. "I'm a guest," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming steel. "Leo invited me, and excuse me, but you're making me uncomfortable." "I'm making you uncomfortable?" He laughed, a harsh, barking sound, looking around at the room for validation that wasn't coming. "I think you're making everyone uncomfortable, casing the joint, looking for what? Silverware? Jewelry? Or maybe you're looking to hook one of these rich boys so you don't have to work again." That was it. The line was crossed, and Leo, bless his heart, stepped in then, putting a hand on O'Malley's chest saying, "Chip, you need to leave, you're drunk and you're insulting my friend," but O'Malley shoved Leo's hand away with a violence that made people gasp. "Don't touch me, rich boy," he snarled, pulling a badge from his pocket, flashing it like a holy relic. "I'm the law, okay? I know a criminal when I see one. And she," he pointed a thick, shaking finger at me, "she doesn't belong here. I saw her slip something into her purse, probably drugs, probably stole it from the bedroom." It was such a blatant lie, so absurd that I almost laughed. But then I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't just drunkenness. It was hate, pure and simple. The kind of hate that needs to destroy something beautiful, just to feel powerful. "That is a lie," I said, loudly now, addressing the room. "I haven't left this spot in 20 minutes, and I am certainly not carrying drugs." But O'Malley was already pulling out his phone, dialing, his eyes locked on mine with a smirk that promised. "Hell. Yeah, dispatch, this is Officer O'Malley, off duty, requesting a unit to the Sterling estate. I've got a 10 to 10, possible narcotics. Suspect is becoming belligerent, refusing to comply. Yeah, black female, gold dress, looks like she's high on something." He hung up and looked at me. "Now we wait, sweetheart, and when the boys get here, we're gonna strip search you and find whatever it is you're hiding." And the vulgarity of it, the threat of sexual violence wrapped in police procedure, made my stomach turn over. "I am leaving," I said, grabbing my clutch. "I am not staying here to be harassed." And I moved to walk past him, but that's when he grabbed me, his hand clamped onto my upper arm, fingers digging into the soft flesh so hard I knew there would be bruises tomorrow. "You ain't going nowhere," he hissed, and when I tried to pull away, instinctively jerking my arm back, he screamed, "Stop resisting." The magic words, the phrase that gives them permission to do whatever they want. He spun me around, twisting my arm behind my back with enough force to make my shoulder pop, pain shooting all the way down to my fingertips, and I cried out, "I'm not resisting. You're hurting me." But he didn't care. He was in his element now, performing for an audience he thought was on his side. He swept my legs, literally kicked my ankles out from under me, and I went down hard, my knees smashing into the marble floor, the sound of fabric tearing as my dress split up the side, and the collective gasp of the room was drowned out by O'Malley's grunt of exertion as he dropped a knee into my spine. "Stay down," he yelled, pressing my face against the cold stone, the smell of floor wax and dust filling my nose. "You people never learn, do you? Think you can just walk in here and act like you own the place?" Leo was screaming now, trying to get to me, but 2 other guests were holding him back, terrified that the cop would pull a gun. And honestly, I was terrified of that too. My friend Chloe, who had been filming on her phone since the yelling started, was shouting, "She's an architect. She's a guest. You're crazy." But O'Malley just reached for his belt, producing a pair of handcuffs that he carried off duty, like some twisted security blanket. He ratcheted them onto my wrists, tight, so tight the metal bit into the bone. And then he hauled me up by the chains, wrenching my shoulders back in a way that made black spots dance in my vision. "You're making a mistake," I gasped, tears finally spilling over, not from sadness, but from pain and sheer, unadulterated frustration. "Officer, please, listen to me. My name is Sasha Vance. My mother is..." I don't care if your mama is Oprah. He shouted, spitting in my face. You're a criminal, and you're going for a ride. He started dragging me toward the door, parading me past the people I had been laughing with 10 minutes ago, and the humiliation burned hotter than the scrapes on my knees. I looked at Chloe, desperate, and mouthed, "Call her," and Chloe, with her phone still recording in one hand, nodded frantically, scrolling with the other, finding the contact I had saved as Mom Emergency Only. O'Malley dragged me out onto the gravel driveway, the sharp stones cutting into my ruined shoes, the humid night air hitting my sweaty face, and shoved me against the side of his truck, his personal pickup, a lifted monstrosity with a sticker on the back window that said something about, "We don't call 911. You can't transport me in a personal vehicle." I said, my voice shaking but clear, remembering the lectures my mother gave me every time I left the house. That is against protocol. You have to wait for a marked unit. That's when he slapped me a backhanded strike that knocked my head against the truck frame, the taste of copper filling my mouth as my lips split against my teeth. "I tell you what the protocol is," he screamed, his face inches from mine, veins bulging in his neck. "I am the protocol. And right now, the protocol says you shut your mouth before I shut it for you." He opened the back door of the cab and tried to shove me in, but I planted my feet, adrenaline giving me strength I didn't know I had, refusing to get into a car with a drunk, violent man who had just assaulted me. "No," I screamed. "I'm not getting in. Help me, someone help me." And that's when the siren started, not one siren, but a chorus, a symphony of wails coming from the bottom of the hill, and O'Malley grinned, a sickening, triumphant look. "Hear that?" he sneered. "That's the cavalry, sweetheart. That's my boys coming to take out the trash." He looked so proud, so sure of himself, standing there with his hand on his gun belt, waiting for his buddies to arrive and high-five him for capturing the dangerous criminal in the gold silk dress. But as the lights crested the hill, something changed in his face, a flicker of confusion that quickly morphed into doubt, because the lights weren't just blue, they were red and blue, yes, but mixed with the strobing white of federal vehicles, and they weren't just standard cruisers. The first car to screech into the driveway wasn't a local sheriff's deputy. It was a black Chevrolet Suburban with government plates and tinted windows so dark they looked like voids. Then another, then a third. And behind them, 2 motorcycles from the State Patrol, flanking a sleek silver sedan that looked less like a car and more like a weapon. The convoy didn't park. It swarmed, blocking the driveway, blocking the road, blocking O'Malley's truck, turning the night into day with floodlights that blinded us. O'Malley squinted, raising a hand to shield his eyes, stepping back from me, his grip on my arm loosening just a fraction. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. "I didn't call the feds." Doors flew open in perfect synchronization, and men in suits, serious men, with earpieces and hands hovering near waistbands, poured out, moving with a fluid, terrifying efficiency. "Step away from the female," one of them bellowed, a voice that didn't leave room for argument. "Step away and show me your hands." O'Malley froze, his drunk brain trying to process why the SWAT team was here for a shoplifting call. "I'm an officer," he yelled back, flashing his badge again, though it looked pathetic now against the wall of federal authority. "I've got a suspect in custody. She's resisting." The agents didn't care. They formed a perimeter, weapons drawn but low, creating a corridor from the silver sedan to where I was standing, shivering, bleeding, and cuffed. The back door of the silver car opened, and a pair of heels hit the gravel. Sensible, expensive heels followed by a navy blue pantsuit that cost more than O'Malley's truck. Out stepped Eleanor Vance, my mother. But not the mom who makes cinnamon rolls on Sundays. This was Eleanor Vance, the United States Attorney for the Southern District, the woman who took down cartels and corrupt mayors before breakfast, the woman who was currently on the short list for a federal judgeship. She stood up to her full height, smoothed her blazer, and looked across the driveway. She didn't run to me. She didn't scream. She walked. She walked with a slow, terrifying cadence, the gravel crunching under her feet like the bones of her enemies, her face a mask of absolute, frozen fury. O'Malley looked at her, then looked at me, then looked back at her, and I saw the moment. The realization hit him. The resemblance was undeniable. The eyes, the jawline. Who? Who are you? O'Malley stammered, stepping back, his hands shaking now. Mom stopped 10 feet away from him, ignoring him completely, and looked at me. Her eyes scanned my torn dress, the blood on my knees, the swelling on my cheek. And finally, the handcuffs. When she looked back at O'Malley, the temperature in the driveway seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Officer," she said, her voice quiet, calm, and utterly terrifying, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." O'Malley swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Ma'am, step back. This is a police matter. This girl is—" "This girl," my mother interrupted, cutting him off with a sharpness that made him flinch, "is Sasha Vance. I am Eleanor Vance, U.S. Attorney. And you, Officer... what is your name?" She stepped closer, invading his space now, the Secret Service agents shifting but not stopping her. "Oh, O'Malley," he squeaked. "Officer O'Malley," she repeated, tasting the name like it was poison. "You are currently holding my daughter in illegal restraints, on private property, without a warrant, and judging by the smell coming off you while under the influence of alcohol." O'Malley tried to bluster, tried to find that swagger again. She had drugs. I saw her. She resisted arrest. Mom just tilted her head. Did she? Or did you see a young black woman in a nice dress and decide she needed to be humbled? She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen. "Because I have 3 witnesses who sent me video footage of you assaulting her while she was compliant. I have footage of you slapping her while she was handcuffed." O'Malley's face went pale, drained of all color, looking like raw dough. "Slapping?" Mom asked, stepping closer again. "Did you strike my child, officer?" She fell. She was fighting. "Liar," she whispered, and the word hit him harder than a fist. "Agent Miller," she called out without looking away from O'Malley. The lead agent stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am." "Remove these handcuffs from my daughter, and then place them on this man." O'Malley's eyes went wide. "You can't do that. I'm a cop. You can't arrest a cop." "Watch me," Mom said. "You're under arrest for assault, battery, kidnapping, deprivation of rights under color of law, and public intoxication. And that's just what I can think of off the top of my head." The agents moved in, and that's when O'Malley broke. He looked at the circle of federal agents, looked at the neighbors who had come out to watch, looked at Leo and my friends who were cheering from the porch, and he realized he wasn't just losing his job. He was losing his life. His knees started to shake, actually knocking together like in a cartoon, and he started to cry ugly, gasping sobs. "Please," he whimpered. "Please, I didn't know. I thought she was I didn't know she was somebody." Mom stopped, turning back to him one last time. "That," she said, pointing a manicured finger at his chest, "is exactly the problem. You thought she was nobody. You thought you could break her because she didn't matter. You're only sorry because you picked the one girl in this state whose mother can end you with a phone call." She leaned in close, so close she could probably smell the fear on him. "But don't worry, Chip. You're going to be somebody now. You're going to be the example." And then, right there in the driveway, under the glare of the floodlights, with 60 people watching and cameras rolling, Officer Chip O'Malley, the terror of the neighborhood, the man who was the law... wet himself. A dark stain spread across the front of his khakis, trickling down his leg, pooling around his boots. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of liquid hitting the gravel. He looked down, horrified, sobbing harder now, completely broken. Mom didn't laugh. She didn't smile. She just looked at the stain, then looked at his face with pure disgust. "Pathetic," she murmured. "Get him out of my sight." The agents grabbed him none too gently and marched him toward one of the Suburbans, his wet pants shuffling against each other, his head hanging low, a complete shell of a man. As they shoved him into the back seat, the crowd on the porch erupted applause, cheers, people shouting justice. And for the first time all night, I started to cry, really cry, the adrenaline crashing down. Mom was there instantly, wrapping her arms around me, pulling me into the safety of her shoulder, not caring about the blood or the sweat ruining her suit. "I've got you," she whispered into my hair. "I've got you, baby. It's over." But as I watched the taillights of the convoy fade into the night, carrying away the man who had tried to break me, I knew it wasn't really over, not for me, and definitely not for him. Because while the handcuffs were off my wrists, the feeling of them was still there, a ghost weight that I knew would linger for a long time, reminding me that in this world, sometimes the only difference between being a victim and being a survivor is who your mother happens to be, and that more than anything is the part that keeps me awake at night. The drive away from the Sterling estate was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm breaks. With me curled up in the back of my mother's government-issued sedan, my knees stinging under the gauze the on-site. Medic had applied, and my mother, Eleanor Vance, sitting next to me, holding my hand so tight her knuckles were white. She hadn't said a word since we left the driveway, since we left O'Malley sobbing in his own mess in the back of a federal vehicle. But I could feel the energy radiating off her. It was a cold, calculated rage, the kind that doesn't burn out. Fast but smolders for years, fueling lawsuits and indictments. I looked out the tinted window at the passing trees, watching the wealthy suburbs give way to the highway, and I kept replaying the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut, the feeling of the gravel biting into my skin, and the look on O'Malley's face when he realized his life was over. "Does it hurt?" Mom asked finally, her voice soft, breaking the silence without looking at me, her eyes fixed on the partition between us and the driver. "My knees or my pride?" I asked, trying to crack. A joke, trying to be the tough daughter she raised, but my voice cracked, betraying me. She squeezed my hand, both. "My knees are fine," I lied, shifting my legs and wincing. "But, Mom, what happens now?" "I mean, really? He's a cop. They protect their own. You know that better than anyone." She turned to me then, and in the passing streetlights, I saw a look I'd never seen directed at me. It was fierce, protective, almost predatory. "Not this time, Sasha. The blue wall of silence works when there are no cameras and no witnesses with clout. Tonight, he assaulted a federal prosecutor's daughter in front of the sons and daughters of half the donor class in the state. He's not getting protected. He's getting sacrificed." She was right. Of course she's always right, but the reality of what happened didn't hit me until the next morning. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, stiff and sore, my phone buzzing so hard on the nightstand it was vibrating off the edge. I picked it up, expecting a few texts from friends, maybe a concerned message from Leo, but instead, I had hundreds of notifications, thousands. Chloe's video, the one where O'Malley slapped me, the one where he screamed that he was the protocol, had been uploaded. It was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. The hashtag Justice for Sasha was trending #1 in the country. But it wasn't just the assault. It was the aftermath. Someone, maybe a neighbor, maybe one of the catering staff, had filmed the arrival of the motorcade and the confrontation. The video of Chip O'Malley, the bully with a badge, weeping and wetting himself while my mother stood over him like an avenging angel, had 20 million views. The comments were a mix of horror and vindication. People were digging up O'Malley, some less. Passed within hours, internet sleuths finding old yearbooks, old complaints. It turned out I wasn't the first person he'd terrorized. I was just the first one people cared about. There was a comment from a guy named Marcus. This cop broke my brother's arm 2 years ago during a traffic stop. No charges. Glad he finally messed with the wrong one. Another from a woman. He stalked me after pulling me over for a broken taillight. I moved towns to get away from him. Reading them, my stomach churned. I felt sick, not just because of what he did to me, but because he had been doing this for years, hurting people who didn't have Eleanor Vance for a mother, and getting away with it every single time. Mom came in with a cup of tea and an iPad, looking like she hadn't slept but was fully dressed in her armor, a crisp gray suit. "You need to see this," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. She showed me a press conference happening live. It was the police chief, a man who usually looked smug and untouchable, looking sweaty and terrified behind the podium. "Officer O'Malley has been terminated effective immediately," he stammered, reading from a paper that shook in his hands. "He has been charged with aggravated assault, kidnapping, and violation of civil rights. We are cooperating fully with the federal investigation." Mom paused the video. "They're throwing him to the wolves to save the pack," she said, "but we're not letting them stop at him. I've already spoken to the Attorney General. We're opening a pattern or practice investigation into the entire precinct." The next few months were a blur of depositions, interviews, and therapy. I had to sit in a room and tell my story over and over again, reliving the smell of his breath, the pain in my shoulder. O'Malley's lawyer tried to argue that he was under extreme stress and that I had provoked him by being uncooperative, but the video was damning, and then came the trial. I walked into the courtroom wearing the suit that covered my scars, head held high, and saw O'Malley at the defense table. He looked smaller, shrunken. The arrogant bully from the party was gone, replaced by a pathetic man in an ill-fitting suit who wouldn't meet my eyes. When I testified, I didn't cry. I spoke clearly. I told the jury exactly what he said, exactly how he made me feel like. I was nothing, like I was dirt to be scraped off his shoe. And then, the prosecution played the video. The sound of the slap echoed in the quiet courtroom, and I saw the jurors flinch. But the moment that sealed it was the body cam footage from the first arriving officer, the one who O'Malley thought was coming to save him. It showed O'Malley mocking me, dragging me, laughing about teaching me a lesson. It showed malice. It showed hate. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, O'Malley put his head on the table and cried, not the scary loud sobbing from the driveway, but a quiet, hopeless weeping. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. 8 years. It felt like a lifetime, and yet, not enough time at all. But here's the thing, the isn't the happy bow tie you might expect. Yeah, O'Malley went to jail. Yeah, my mom became a hero, the Iron Lady of Justice. Yeah, I got a settlement that paid off my student loans and funded a nonprofit I started for victims of police brutality. But walking out of that courthouse, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I looked at the crowd of supporters outside, holding signs with my face on them, and I saw a young girl, maybe 18, crying and holding a sign that said, "My brother didn't make it." And that's when it hit me, the guilt. The survivors. Guilt. Why did I get justice? Was it because I was innocent? Plenty of innocent people go to jail or the morgue. Was it because I was smart? Smart doesn't stop a bullet. No, I got justice because I had proximity to power. I got justice because my zip code and my last name gave me a shield that most people don't have. O'Malley peed himself not because he realized what he did was wrong, but because he realized he had accidentally punched up instead of down. If my mother had been a nurse, or a teacher, or a cleaner, O'Malley would be sitting in a patrol car right now, laughing about the girl in the gold dress he humbled. And I'd be sitting in a cell with a record that would ruin my architecture career before it started. That night changed me. I still go to parties, but I don't relax the same way. I scan the room, I check the exits, I watch the security guards. And I think about Chip O'Malley sitting in a cell, and I wonder, is he sorry he hurt me? Or is he just sorry he got caught? And more importantly, I think about the other O'Malleys out there, the ones who learned from his mistake not to be less racist, but to be more careful about who they target. They learn to check the shoes, check the car, check the connections before they strike dot. So when people ask me if I'm happy about the outcome, if I feel like justice was served, I tell them this: justice for me is a fluke. Justice for everyone is the goal. And we are a long way from that. O'Malley was one bad apple, sure, but he grew on a tree that's been rotting for a long time. And chopping off one branch doesn't fix the roots. I still have the dress, by the way. I kept it. It's in the back of my closet, torn hem, bloodstains, and all. Sometimes I look at it just to remember that the line between VIP guest and suspect is thinner than silk, and it can be cut by a man with a badge and a grudge and a heartbeat. It's a reminder that I have work to do, because next time, the girl in the dress might not have a governor or a prosecutor on speed dial. She might just have us. And we have to be enough. So tell me, what would you have done? If you saw that happening, would you have pulled out your phone? Would you have stepped in? Or would you have waited for someone else to be the hero? Because in the real world, the cavalry doesn't always come in black Suburbans. Sometimes the cavalry has to be you. Let me know what you think in the comments, because this conversation, it's far from over.